Welcome everybody to Learn Biz. So, I actually have a piece of paper in front of me. Rarely happens.
No, that's a first.
I know this is hardcore serious. No, we actually are gonna analyze a Forbes article that was done. It's a few years old. It was actually done in 2020, but I think the content was really good. It was 14 characteristics of a high performing team. Yeah, I'm already slanging
awesome
it
team.
as an awesome team. Everything is awesome. So, of 14 characteristics of high performing teams. I agree with some. I agree with most of the article.
I agreed with most of it.
Some of it felt a little cliche. So there's none of it that I disagreed with. Some of it felt a little cliche, and I want to kind of talk about that. But I think we're going to hit these a little bit rapid fire. There's 14 points, and
for me, a couple of them were kind of in the same category.
I agree.
So I think you could have cut it down, but I see why they did it and what they were trying to show.
Yeah. So, but I honestly, I feel like it could have been condensed down a little bit. In fact, my notes, I did condense it down. It's funny looking at your notes, sort of similar. So, okay.
Well, there was, as I looked at each bullet point, I kind of took one nugget from most of them that all right, that I like that piece, and that would be a good one to look at my teams and what do we need to clean up and how do I implement that into what we're doing as well. So go ahead.
I took a nugget from 13 of the 14.
Wow.
One of them I thought was worthless.
All right.
Should we wait till we get to it?
Yeah.
Are we going to take these in numerical order?
Yeah, let's just do it in numerical order. So the first one is inclusive thinking.
Okay. Why don't we just let's alternate. You grab inclusive thinking. I'll grab number 2.
All right. So what are your thoughts on inclusive
I
thinking?
just said you grab.
Sorry.
All right. My thought.
No, I got it. Yeah, you cut that one out of this podcast, would you? And I know you're not, sucker.
I won't.
So inclusive thinking. The thing I liked about that one is that just finding ways to bring people and their unique perspectives into the table so that you're getting the best think tank possible.
Right.
And I like that they when they talked about the more inclusive you are, the more open and exploratory you can be for creative ideas. Mm-hmm. And I like that component of it.
So my comment, and I'm going to use this to lead into number 2,
okay,
because this is how I looked at every single one of these. I actually looked at the opposite and kind of asked myself, am I seeing that problem in teams? And so a lot of times people are like, oh yeah, we're completely inclusive. But I'm like, in which areas are you excluding? In which areas are you pushing people out for whatever their differences are, different things, which does lead into number 2, which is diversity.
You're right.
And so I'm trying to think of too much of the same is dangerous and prohibitive to high performance. And so diversity hits in a number of different ways where you can have typical diversity that is race, gender, a lot of the protected classes end up being a measurement of diversity, but there's also a lot of diversity in culture, in ideas, in the way you approach problem solving, and
I also say where you were raised.
Yeah.
I mean, you get people from different states, and it's crazy how different they think.
Yeah. Yeah. Or when you were raised, generational diversity, I think is solid to have on your team. Yeah. If you start looking around and everyone is the same age, then you're missing out on a lot of benefit that the older and younger generations bring to the table. Yeah. And so, I don't know. I guess I'll say this, and then we'll jump to number 3. For me, diversity, there's a level of discomfort because we gravitate to what we're familiar with, And so if you're not feeling a level of discomfort, do something to make it a little more uncomfortable. And if you have a small team that works great together, you could bring in an advisor for some diversity. You could watch a YouTube video that challenges your beliefs and then discuss that as diversity. There are different ways to bring in diversity into your organization.
Yeah. So number 3 is respect and trust. And that one's pretty straightforward. I mean, the one point I kind of took from that, because it's obvious, if you don't have respect and trust in your team, it's not going to be high performing, period.
Yeah.
Because jealousy is going to be in there, envy is going to be in there. You're going to kind of thwart someone because you think they're doing better than you. But the one in there that I did like, that if you do have trust and respect, the beauty of that is it allows you to hold each other accountable in a very productive way that allows everyone's performance to increase.
So I know that you're running with this one, but I have a great example that I really want to share. So my son, he's 11, and he's on a competition soccer team. And last season, they basically dominated their region, had a really, really good team. It was fun to watch them, and it was fun to watch the progression. They actually started out losing a couple of their games, and then they finished by just dominating. So the progression was fabulous. The interesting thing is, at this young age, they don't play full field. And they actually added, I think they added to a full field between whatever, like 10-year-old and now they're at 11-year-old. And so they had to bring on a few more players to the team. And so they had a dialed-in team last season. And I went and watched. They just did their first game of this season, and they got beat pretty well. They just got beat. And I talked to my son. I'm like, well, that was rough. And he's like, yeah, we've got all these new players that just, we don't have a rhythm. And it was interesting. And then I watched their second game, and they ended up winning that game 4-2. And I'm like, that's how you guys need to be playing. They're like, well, yeah, honestly, we needed that first game to get out of the way so that we could start interacting with each other. And in the article, and I wrote this down because it was that good, be able to throw blind passes and hold each other accountable. So, your team is good when you just pitch the ball to them and you don't even have to look. It's a blind pass. They're going to be where they're supposed to be. And so I thought that was a cool aspect of respect and trust.
Yeah, great example. All right, you got the next one. You want me? Personal excellence.
Sure, you can take it since I kind of dominated respect and trust.
When I look at that, the one point that I pulled out of that one is that, and this is tough, and it made me examine my life, and if I'm doing this one, and that is holding ourselves accountable for showing up, to perform the best of our ability every day. Are we showing up, in our own excellence?
Hard to do.
Yeah. Because if you're not, and especially if you're in a lead on the team, it's going to affect others on the team. So that one was personal excellence. Just good reminder, when I show up to work, am I showing up to give 100%? And if I'm not, what do I need to shift to get there?
And I like that you said good reminder, because a lot of these, they're not rocket science. This isn't new. I didn't read anything in this that was new.
No.
Everything was a reminder, but a lot of it I've slipped out of that habit, or I could do better at. It's a weakness for me. And so, good reminder. All right, number 5, communication. So this is the one that I didn't think they covered well. And I'm not going to cover it well either right now, but I am going to say this. Everyone understands that you need good communication, yet we're bad at it. But the funny thing is everyone thinks that everyone else is bad at it. If you talk to anyone, especially a manager, and you say, what are your communication skills? No one says my communication skills are in the toilet. They always are like, yeah, I've got good communication skills, probably a little bit above average communication skills, or I'm a good presenter, or different things. And they look at communication almost like confidence.
Yeah.
How confident are you in what you're saying? I'm like, well, honestly, confidence and communication really aren't correlated. I mean, confidence has a lot to do with how well you can present. I train a lot of people because I do presenting, and I get a lot of people that are like, hey, how do I present? And I'm like, yeah, you got to be confident in what you're saying. You got to be confident in your body language. But that doesn't mean that you're communicating. That just means that you believe in what you're saying. And so I didn't like what they put in there. It felt a little too shallow. And I would say, if you want to have effective teams and you really want to have good communication, you got to dig deep. You can't take this, to me, it's not a subtle reminder, oh yeah, I need to communicate well. It's, you should really evaluate your communication styles. I was working with a company recently, and it was interesting because I'm the outsider. I'm kind of in the consulting position. And I was working with their management team, and there were three of them, and I asked all three of them a question. It was a very black and white question, and they all gave me the same answer. And then they turned around and did just the opposite, and I realized in their mind, they thought that they were doing what they said that they were doing, but the reality is that they weren't doing that. And the funny thing is in this instance, they weren't really like, they weren't aware of that at all. And so it's interesting, and this is not a unique situation. It happens with all sorts of management teams where you start talking to them and you say, okay, are you guys oh yeah, we communicate all the time. And I'm like,
Well, and for me, when I looked at that one, communication, I know they've got it number 5. I don't know that there was specifically an order of how they did it, but I would have put communication towards the end, meaning that if a lot of things in front of that are not in order, communication is going to break down.
Yeah. And that's an interesting thought, where good communication is a result of other things working well.
Yeah, that's my belief.
So, okay, I like it.
Number 6, healthy conflict. In the state of Utah, you have Governor Cox that's, pretty much said, disagree better.
Yeah.
Which is, he's a huge advocate in trying to show how to bridge that, you don't have to, when you disagree, it doesn't have to be ugly. There's ways to work through those and negotiate. And so when I first saw that, that's the first thing that came to my mind in the campaigns that he does on that. But, they also say in there, if the team does not have diversity of thought or individualism and do not feel safe to dissent, productivity will be stunted. And that's absolutely true. We see it all the time in meetings that if the boss is in there, the conversation is completely different than when the boss is gone, right?
The meeting after the meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So think about that are there meetings after the meetings, and are they the wrong kind of meeting? And if they are, then you don't have healthy conflict. You don't have people that feel like they can talk openly to say, hey, look, I think this is wrong and this is how we need to approach it. But at the same time, if you're the person that's saying, I think this is what you need to do and this is how we approach it, when someone says, nah, I don't think so, don't take offense, right?
Right.
Because that's the next problem, that if you think everyone's going to take offense or you're going to take offense, then communication and healthy conflict break down.
Man, I heard a quote and I can't remember it, and I'm paraphrasing it, and I probably should go to the person who said the quote because it was beautiful. It was basically, don't take anyone personally because they're just trying to go through their life too. And if you look at it from your own perspective, are you really out trying to offend people? Are you really out trying to pick fights with people? No, you're just trying to do your thing. And so you have all these people that there's like, oh, that person's got it in for me. And I'm like, most of the time they don't actually. Most of the time they're just trying to do their thing. And so... Okay, number 7 was adaptability, just the ability to change. I don't know that this needs a lot said. It's pretty well known that if you are too rigid to change, then eventually the world will change around you and you will become outdated, obsolete, or irrelevant. And so just making sure that you're adaptable to change, open to change.
I like the word they use in there, human agility. That being flexible, don't get so rigid,
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you're not doing little things in your life to where you can kind of deal with change, because it's always coming, I'd say fix that too.
Well, and I would also look at this, and I'm stereotyping here, so I apologize for stereotyping, but one of the big complaints on ageism is that you have an older person, they're like, oh yeah, they won't adapt to anything. And I'm like, stereotypes are there for a reason. It doesn't mean that they're truth, but it means that it's happened enough that people start stereotyping. And so, and I don't really care what your age is, but if you're stuck in a pattern because you've been doing that, I mean, you could be in your 20s and do the same thing for the last 5 years and not want to change. And so, look at your life and say, okay, how human flexible am I?
Yeah. So number 8, engagement. I didn't have a whole lot on that one. The note that I made is that, are we engaging all the time, or are we engaging when it seems to best suit us?
Yeah.
Because if you want to have a high productive team, you have to engage even when you don't want to, so that you keep the continuity and the trust there. So
I would put this kind of in that same bucket as communication, where I would say, if you have some of these other things in place, if there's respect and trust, if there's healthy conflict, you're naturally going to be engaged. And so if you're disengaged, it's probably more because of something else than just, there's some people that are naturally disengaged, and that's just bad fit. Make sure you don't bring them on your team if they have zero passion in what you're doing. But I think most of the time that, But put it toward the bottom, just like communication. Let it take care of itself. Psychological safety. I feel like this is worth pointing out. Do people feel safe in the work environment? But I think that there's some other things when I look at respect and trust, when I look at diversity, when I look at inclusive.
My same thoughts.
Honestly, if you're taking care of those 3 things, you should be covering psychological safety.
Right.
So I don't know. There's a lot that I'm going to add to that.
Okay. So 10, decision-making, flexibility. I do want to read this one. High-performing teams have the freedom and flexibility to make decisions in real time rather than waiting for management.
I actually marked that exact statement.
Right? Because so many people feel, I don't dare make that decision. I'll get in trouble versus, you know what? Do you have a culture where people know they can make that decision? And even if it's the wrong decision, as a manager or owner, you're going to say, all right, it wasn't my favorite decision, but I'm going to work with you. We're going to fix it so that you start to see how I think, so that you know that you can run more often and not have that fear.
And I think it's important to make a note here. If you are in the management role, don't undermine your subordinates. When they make a decision, you need to go out of your way to respect those decisions.
Even if you don't like it.
And then later use it as a training opportunity and say, hey, I'm supporting you on the decision that you made, but in future, I'd like you to look at this first before making that decision. And so I see a lot of managers that they undermine people below them, not even intentionally.
Right, that's right.
Most of the time it's unintentional. Yeah. So... okay, openness to innovation. So I don't know that there was a ton from the article. So this article came out at the time that the pandemic was really raging. Yeah. And so it focused on the idea of remote work and how critical remote work was to keeping operations alive during the pandemic. And so I think that's a good example. I don't know that remote work is the same today as it was then, but...
Well, and my one note was growth mindset.
Yeah.
That when you talk about innovation, do you have a growth mindset, or are you just trying to maintain the status quo?
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think that covers that.
All right. Ability to surmount challenges. I didn't... this one was kind of an odd one for me, because when I read the title and then when I read what they had written, it was a little bit different than how I viewed it.
Yeah, I think the title's misleading.
But they did make a point that was interesting, that the ability to surmount challenges should be looked at it from a team perspective, not an individual perspective, meaning their comment, when we demonstrate empathy towards team members and even cover for them when the power is out, that's power in itself. Meaning challenges, our team members are going to run into challenges, and are we going to just leave them out to hang and dry? Well, that was their responsibility versus, no, look, they've got a problem. Let's pick it up so they get back on track. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was a lot different than what I expected it to be.
Well, okay. So
it was more personal on the individual than it was actually on
And that's what I think is important to throw out is it had this line, the ability to surmount challenges thrown at us from outside the workplace. Yeah. And I've worked with teams, so there's a lot of people that struggle with anxiety, depression, physical health issues. Yeah. If you've got anyone that has kids, there will be a time where there's like, I got to go take care of my kids. And that's their priority. And so I think that this idea that life goes on outside of business, I think that there was this old belief that you worked for the company and you were just enslaved to the company almost. Yeah. And people are realizing that's not...
healthy.
It's a churn and burn mentality. You're going to burn through people and get toxic people that stay. And so recognizing that things come up outside of work that require people's attention and just working through that long-term creates greater productivity. Yeah. That's what I thought on that. Okay, number 13 that I've got here, behavioral awareness. So just understanding team dynamics in terms of personal strengths, weaknesses is key. This is interesting. We could do a full episode on it because there's a lot of people using personality quizzes. I see this popping up in interview processes, and I see a lot of people. We've done a lot with strength finders. Yeah. That's been one. In fact, you actually just put together a training with strength finders. With the local chamber of commerce, if I remember correctly. Right. And so understanding your strengths and weaknesses, and this is where I'm going to leave the cliffhanger, I think sometimes people go in and they're just like, oh yeah, I scanned that, the little cliff notes of it. And so now I'm an expert in personality and merging personalities together. And I'm like, so my take, I'm deviating from the article here. My take is if you're going to use personality quizzes, don't use it as a way to filter people out. I think that far too few people understand personality well enough that they can filter people out. I would use it as a way to identify strengths to leverage. So when you have someone on your team that they're great with organization, we'll give them organizational tasks. Right. And that's how I think it's stronger.
Exactly. My two notes were, I wrote down Myers-Briggs, Strength Finder, Bossy Disc. Those are all different personality type things to help you understand what you're good at or what you're not good at. But I just find that too many people, even though we do those even as a team sometimes, once it's done with, they just get put in a drawer. We don't actually say, okay, look, let's really understand them for who they are. And then every time we take on a project, let's say, okay, wait a minute. Who's got what skill sets and what should we do so that we can get them involved, right?
Right.
So
yeah, I think that's good.
So last one that we got is pride in the company. And that is a tough one. Some days that is really a tough one.
Yeah.
So I'm going to leave it at that.
Well, I'm not going to leave it that open. Here are my 2 cents on pride in the company. People need to be proud of what they do. Yeah. And as a manager, you've got to be aware of, are you congratulating your teams for their successes? Are you noticing when they went above and beyond and really did a good job and helping them to feel proud about a job well done? Because too many managers get a little bit focused on either that top line or bottom line, sales or profits, and they're just churning money here. And I'm like, a lot of the best things that happen in a business won't have immediate monetary benefit.
Yeah.
And so you've got to recognize that people, they went in and they cleaned up the file system that was driving everyone crazy because no one could find their correct documents. And that's a job well done that you're not going to see on the financial statements. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of pride that can be had when you feel proud about what you do. You're engaged.
Well, and that's what my only thought on it was, when I go to work, do I love what I do? Do I feel engaged, or is it just a job?
Just a job, a job.
Right, because if it's just a job, I'm never going to put in the effort that my company would love to see because I'm not invested. So find ways to make sure that your team is invested.
And be careful, because your goals as the owner rarely are the same as your employees. Right. And so you start having all of these incentive programs that just don't jazz people. Yeah. And so... All right. I think we're good right there. Thanks. I hope you guys liked this. If there are other articles that you would like us to review, go ahead and submit them. Ryan at learnbiz.co, Ethan at learnbiz.co, and we will catch you next time.
See you.